When she walked away, I didn't chase her, I started walking toward myself. My name's George Matheson. I'm 62 years old, and I've spent the last 35 years building a quiet life with a woman I thought I knew. We raised 2 kids, paid off a modest home, and ran a small boat repair business by the lake. Nothing flashy, just honest work that kept the lights on. Karen and I weren't a fairy tale. But we were steady. I thought that counted for something. The morning it all started, I was drinking my coffee by the back window, looking out at Lake Hartwell. The water was still, glassy. Fall had just started brushing the trees with color, and the mist rolled low along the surface like a secret being whispered. She walked in, hair pinned up like she was headed to a meeting, not the grocery run she'd mentioned. Her blue sweater was new. I hadn't seen it before. She didn't sit. Just stood in the doorway, hands folded, eyes unreadable. "George," she said, "I've been thinking. I need some space. Time to figure out who I am outside of us." I didn't speak right away. She wasn't crying. Her tone was careful, controlled, like she'd rehearsed it. "Are you asking for a separation?" I asked eventually. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I think it's for the best. I've booked a cabin near Asheville. A few weeks. Maybe a month." "A month?" I set my mug down, quietly. "Does Lily know?" She shook her head. "Don't make this about the kids. They're adults now." I wanted to ask why she hadn't talked to me about any of this sooner. Why she'd chosen now. But something about the way she gripped her purse made it clear she wasn't looking for input. She was leaving. That part was already decided. "I guess you should go then," I said, standing. "You'll want to beat the traffic." Her jaw tensed, surprised by the absence of resistance. But what was I going to do, beg? Karen left that afternoon. The silence in the house stretched wide, like someone had opened all the doors and let the wind sweep everything clean. I slept on the couch that night, though the bed was mine. It just felt wrong. For the first week, I tried to focus on work. Replacing propellers, resealing fiberglass, winterizing outboards. The guys at the shop didn't notice anything off. I kept it that way. No point in airing dirty laundry. Lily called a few days later. "Hey, Dad. Mom said she was on a retreat. Some self-discovery thing." I hated lying to my daughter, but I didn't know what to say. "That's what she told me, too," I said. "She okay?" I hesitated. "I think she's trying to be." It was a partial truth. One that settled between us like fog. Then, 3 weeks in, I stopped by our storage unit to grab a pressure washer we hadn't used in a while. I was looking for the key in the console of Karen's old car, the one we hadn't driven since we bought the truck, when I found something strange. A parking receipt. Charlotte. Not Asheville. 2 weeks ago. I sat back in the driver's seat, the paper in my hand trembling slightly. Maybe she made a detour, I thought. Maybe there's an explanation. But it didn't sit right. I told myself to leave it. Not to start playing detective in my own marriage. People make mistakes. They wander. They come back. But the next day, curiosity won out. I logged into our shared phone account, something we rarely checked, just to see if she'd been in touch with Lily or Ethan. But it wasn't the calls that caught my eye. It was the location pings. Karen's phone hadn't been in Asheville for days. It had been bouncing between Charlotte and a small suburb outside it. Same place. Repeatedly. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't want to believe it. But deep down, I think I already knew. You don't pack an overnight bag and say you need space, then spend that space returning to the same neighborhood over and over again. I didn't call her. I didn't confront her. I went to work. I changed the oil in someone's pontoon. I paid the power bill. I raked leaves. And that night, I opened the safe in the garage. It was a heavy old thing, one I inherited from my father. Inside was a small envelope marked, "Walk Money," a joke he used to make about having cash for when life starts walking away from you. I counted the bills. $11,200. Saved over years. Birthday cash, side jobs, odd tips. Just in case. Just in case what? I'd never imagined this. I sat on the garage floor, the cold concrete seeping through my jeans, wondering what else I didn't know about the woman I'd spent half my life loving. And more importantly, what I was going to do next. The first lie changes something. It doesn't just break trust, it shifts the entire weight of memory. Once I saw the truth hiding behind Karen's retreat story, every moment in the past few months started flickering like a dying light bulb. The late night showers. The new passwords. The way she flinched when I asked simple questions, like I'd shown a flashlight somewhere she wasn't ready to clean. But I still hadn't confronted her. I wasn't ready. Instead, I cleaned the boat shed from top to bottom. Reorganized every shelf. Polished every rusted socket and bolt as if clarity might come from creating order with my hands. My dad always said work was the best medicine, but he never had to use it to stitch up a cracked heart. 2 days after I found the receipt, Ethan showed up with a six-pack and that look adult sons get when they want to say something serious but aren't sure how to open the box. "Mom said you've been quiet," he said, setting the beers on the table. "Too quiet." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that a diagnosis now?" He smiled faintly. "You okay?" I wanted to lie. To nod and say it's just a phase. But there's something about watching your grown son grow worried over you that breaks down the instinct to shield them. "She's not in Asheville," I said. Ethan tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "She's been in Charlotte. Not just once. Repeatedly." The receipts, the phone location, I let the sentence trail off. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Just stared at his hands. "You think she's with someone," he finally said. "I think I'd be a fool not to," I answered. He opened a beer and handed it to me. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to wait," I said. "And watch. And think." He frowned. "That's not like you." "No," I said, twisting the cap. "It's exactly like me. I don't scream. I don't chase. But I don't forget either." That night I went back through old emails. Backups of cloud storage. Credit card statements. Quiet digital trails. And it was there, not glaring, but woven in like thread between clean lines. A 2-night hotel booking in July, marked K. Larkin. Karen's initials and her maiden name. A second phone line, paid in cash through some online third-party carrier. A private mailbox in Charlotte. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a second life. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the tick of the old wall clock. Every sound in the house suddenly felt intrusive. Her candles. Her framed photos. Her damn antique plates on the wall. None of it belonged to me anymore. So I started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just freedom. The next morning, I drove 2 towns over and paid cash for a used Jeep. No one knew me there. I asked the salesman not to register my name on the dealership's promo list. Told him it was a gift for a nephew. He didn't care. Then I opened a P.O. box. Small, inconspicuous. Somewhere I could forward anything important. Step by step, I began untangling myself from the shared life Karen had already abandoned in spirit. I moved tools I cared about into the boat shed. I backed up all my files. I canceled a shared grocery card and requested new login credentials for the utilities. None of it loud. None of it final. But it felt like reclaiming oxygen. 3 weeks after Karen had gone to Asheville, I received a message, short, casual, trying too hard to be breezy. Hey. Just checking in. Might extend my stay another week or two. The air's doing me good. Red heart. I didn't respond. She hadn't sent a single photo of the place. Not one call just to hear my voice. Not a single question about how I was doing. It was like I'd been a coat she shrugged off in spring. But I wasn't going to beg to be worn again. That night, I took my folding chair and a thermos of strong tea down to the dock. Sat with my feet resting against the edge of the water, listening to the frogs and the ripple of fish near the pilings. And I realized something. I wasn't lonely. Not really. I missed a version of my wife that hadn't existed for a long time. The woman who used to hum when she cooked. Who made fun of my old vinyl records but secretly played them when I was gone. Who fell asleep against my shoulder during documentaries she swore she wanted to finish. But that version was gone. Whoever had packed her bags 3 weeks ago was someone else. Someone strategic. Someone cold. So I started looking at listings. Cabins. Lakefront properties. Small homes with creaky porches and stubborn windows, the kind of places you could fix with your hands. I didn't know what I was building toward. Only that I had to be ready. Because when Karen came back, and she would, I needed to have already left the version of myself who would take her back. And just when I started to feel that steel settling into my bones, like I'd be able to handle whatever was next. She came home. No warning. No text. No headlights in the drive. Just a key turning in the lock at 7:43 on a Wednesday night. And a suitcase thudding softly against the hallway rug. The sound of her suitcase dragging across the hallway rug should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt like someone had rolled a stranger's luggage into my life. Karen stepped into the kitchen like nothing had changed. Her hair was a little lighter, her skin tanned, her sweater a shade of red she'd never worn before. She smelled of some new perfume, citrusy, sharp, not the soft lavender she used to prefer. "Hi," she said, setting her purse on the counter. "I didn't want to wake you. Thought I'd surprise you." "You did," I said, setting down the wrench I'd been using to fix the kitchen tap. "Back early from Asheville?" Her eyes flickered. Change of plans. She poured herself water like she still lived here. The retreat was good, though. I think it helped. Helped with what? I asked quietly. Clarity. She sat at the table, smiling like she was offering me a gift. Sometimes you need to step away to see what you have. The nerve of it. For weeks she'd been slipping into someone else's world, hotels, secret numbers, a different name, and now she wanted to drift back into mine as if nothing had shifted. I dried my hands slowly. "I'm glad you found clarity," I said. "Because I have some of my own." She looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" I said, "I know you weren't in Asheville." Her knuckles whitened around the glass. "Excuse me." "I know about Charlotte," I said. "The receipts. The phone. The second line. The private mailbox." For a moment, she froze, then leaned back in her chair like a poker player trying to read the table. "George, you've been spying on me." "I've been living with you," I said. "Or at least trying to." She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried another tack. "It's not what you think." "I don't think anything," I said evenly. "I know what the evidence says. If you've got a better story, now's the time." Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. "It was supposed to be temporary. I needed a break. You've been so distant lately." I almost laughed. "That's rich." She stood, pacing now. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." "Get what far?" I asked. "The retreat? The hotel bookings under your maiden name? The second phone?" Her face flushed. You don't understand. Then explain it, I said, leaning against the counter. Make me understand. But she didn't. She stared at the floor, lips trembling, as if rehearsing excuses she no longer believed. I took a slow breath. You told me you needed space. You've had it. I didn't interfere. I didn't ask questions. But don't come back here pretending we're the same people we were before you left. Her head snapped up. So what now? You just kick me out. Throw away 35 years. I shook my head. I'm not kicking you out. You're free to do what you want. But you're not walking back into this house like nothing happened. Not after the lies. Karen blinked, as if seeing me for the first time. You've changed, she whispered. I've stopped pretending, I said. Silence stretched between us. Outside, the lake lapped gently against the dock, the same sound that had once soothed us both after long days. Now it felt like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. Finally she spoke. We can fix this, she said softly. We can go to counseling. We can start over. I thought about the safe in the garage, the Jeep parked 2 towns over, the listings of small cabins by remote lakesides that I'd been studying at night. And about how, for the first time in years, I'd started to breathe again. No, I said quietly. We can't. She stared at me, stunned. You don't mean that. I walked past her, opened the back door, and looked out at the dark water. You made your choice weeks ago. You just didn't tell me. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, voice shaking. You didn't mean to get caught, I replied. For a long time she didn't move. Then, finally, she lifted her suitcase again. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, I said. But you won't find what you're looking for here. The click of the door closing behind her was softer than I'd expected. No slam, no shouting. Just the hush of something ending. I stayed at the window until her car's taillights disappeared down the road. Then I turned back to the kitchen, to the wrench, to the dripping tap. My hands shook, but my mind was clear. It wasn't rage I felt. It was release. And as I tightened the last screw on the faucet, I realized I had one more decision to make. Not about Karen. About me. Because if I didn't leave this house soon, I'd start building walls around a life that had already fallen apart. And I wasn't going to be a man waiting by a window for someone who'd already chosen to walk away. The next morning, the house felt like a museum of someone else's life. Karen's perfume still clung to the curtains, but the closets she'd emptied looked like open wounds. The kitchen table, the one we'd bought at a flea market 35 years ago, seemed too big for one man. I made coffee anyway, strong and black, and carried it down to the dock. Mist rose off Lake Hartwell in soft ribbons, curling around my boots. The air smelled like pine and cold metal, the smell of change. I'd spent most of the night sitting at the kitchen counter, staring at the old brass safe in the garage. My father's safe. My father's handwriting on the envelope inside. $11,200. It wasn't a fortune, but it was freedom. Cash earned from side jobs, quiet repairs, birthday tips, and forgotten bonuses. Money Karen had never noticed because she never asked. For years I'd thought of it as an emergency fund. Something for hospital bills or a new engine or helping one of the kids out of a jam. But sitting there in the garage, my fingers resting on the edge of the safe, I realized this was my escape fund. I took a legal pad from the tool bench and started writing a list. Not of grievances. Of steps. Open new checking account in my own name. Forward mail to new P.O. box. Move equipment from shop to secure location. Find property away from town. Each line steadied me. This wasn't revenge. This was building a lifeboat while the ship was still sinking. By noon I was driving to the bank in the old truck, the safe tucked under a blanket in the back. The teller, a young man with a nervous smile, didn't ask why a 62-year-old boat mechanic was opening a new account with a wad of cash. He just printed the forms and slid them over. "Deposit or savings?" he asked. "Both," I said. "Short-term for now, long-term soon." Next stop was a real estate office 3 towns away, one that didn't know my name or my history. I'd seen the listing online at 2 in the morning, a rundown A-frame cabin on 12 acres, 15 miles outside a small lakeside community. The price, $89,000. It needed work, a sagging porch, an old tin roof, a fireplace in pieces, but I'd spent my life fixing things. The photos showed a line of oaks down to the water and a view of the sunrise through east-facing windows. I walked in and asked for the agent whose name was on the listing. A tall woman with auburn hair tied back in a braid came out from behind a desk. Her name tag read Dana Carver. "Mr. Matheson," she said, shaking my hand. "You're interested in the A-frame on Willow Lake?" "Yes," I said. "Cash offer. No inspections." Her eyebrows rose. "That's fast." "I've been fixing boats for 40 years, I said. "I know what I'm looking at." She tilted her head, studying me. "Most people call their spouse before making a purchase like this." "I don't have a spouse anymore," I said quietly. "Just decisions to make." The paperwork took 2 hours. Dana kept glancing at me like she was trying to puzzle out what kind of man buys a broken cabin with cash on a Wednesday afternoon. By sunset, the cabin was mine. I drove out there immediately, following a winding gravel road until the trees opened up to a clearing. The A-frame stood crooked and stubborn against the lake, its porch sagging like tired shoulders, its windows dusty but unbroken. I stepped out of the truck and felt something shift inside me. Not triumph. Not regret. Something like breath after a long dive. The lake was quiet except for the lapping of water against the shore. I imagined mornings here, coffee steaming, tools lined up for repairs, no one waiting for explanations. I stayed until the sky went dark, the crickets rising like a chorus, before driving back to the house I no longer thought of as mine. Karen hadn't called. Neither had Ethan or Lily. The silence of the phone felt like a clean break. I walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at the empty chair across from me. Tomorrow I would start moving my life, piece by piece, into that cabin. Tools first. Then clothes. Then photographs of the kids when they were small. The rest could stay here like artifacts in a museum Karen could curate if she wanted. But for tonight, I sat at the table with the purchase contract folded neatly in front of me. And for the first time in months, I felt something warm bloom under my ribs. Not hope exactly. Permission. I had built a life for everyone else. Now, at 62, I was finally building one for myself. Out on the lake, a lone heron lifted off the water, wings beating slow and sure, heading toward the far bank where the trees swallowed the sky. 2 days later, I packed the truck. I didn't leave a note. Didn't slam any doors. Just loaded what mattered and drove away from the house that had become a museum of silence. The first thing I loaded was the toolbox my father gave me when I was 17. The second was a cardboard box filled with family photos, Ethan at his first fishing tournament, Lily at her piano recital in 5th grade, Karen in a red dress from a Christmas long ago, when we still touched each other without effort. I took exactly 1 chair, 1 skillet, a bag of tools, 3 flannel shirts, and the thermos my daughter had once given me for my birthday, back when she still believed her parents were the kind you looked up to. The cabin was waiting. It smelled of old wood and damp stone, of rust and time. But the bones were good. Solid foundation. Beams you could hang your weight on. A roof that only whined when the wind came in from the west. I opened every window, letting out the ghosts. By sunset, I'd set up a cot in the main room, cleared the fireplace, and made a small dinner of rice and eggs on a portable stove. No electricity yet. No plumbing beyond a working tap out back. But the quiet felt honest. It didn't hum with secrets the way the house with Karen had. On the third day, I heard a truck rumbling up the gravel road. My first thought was that it was the power company. I'd filed the reconnection paperwork that morning. But when the engine cut, I looked through the screen door and saw Dana Carver, the real estate agent, stepping out in jeans and boots, holding 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag. "I figured you wouldn't have a real kitchen yet," she said, offering the bag. "Breakfast sandwiches. Extra cheese." I smiled, surprised by how natural it felt. "You didn't have to. I wanted to see how the place was settling in." She handed me the coffee. "And to make sure you didn't regret the purchase." "I regret the years I waited to do something like this," I said. "Not the doing." She nodded like she understood. "Mind if I look around? Be my guest. Just don't trip on the floorboards in the kitchen. One of them's got a mean attitude." We walked the property together, coffee in hand. She pointed out a down fence line that could use fixing, and I mentioned plans to build a workbench on the porch once I reinforced it. "You handy?" she asked. "Used to fix boats. Engines mostly. But anything with screws and rust makes sense to me." She smiled. "This place will need you then." We stood in silence for a moment, looking out at the lake. A pair of ducks glided across the water like they'd lived here longer than anyone had a right to. "I envy you," Dana said suddenly. "Most people don't leave their old lives. They just shrink to fit them. Maybe I just got tired of shrinking." She looked over at me, her face softer now. "If you ever need help pulling up the porch, I've got a crowbar and 2 stubborn arms." I chuckled. "Careful. That's how friendships start." Dana winked. "Could be worse things." She left an hour later, her tires stirring up gravel as she drove off, but the quiet that followed didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I spent the rest of the afternoon stripping out rotten wood from the deck, sweating through my shirt and listening to the rhythm of work. Every nail pulled was like a weight off my back. At dusk, I sat on the stairs I'd halfway rebuilt and watched the sun sink behind the tree line. My phone buzzed. "Karen." I let it ring. Then, a minute later, a second buzz. A text this time. "I stopped by the house. You're not there. Where are you?" I stared at the screen until it dimmed. 10 minutes later. "You can't just disappear, George. We need to talk. Please." No. We didn't need to talk. She'd done the talking already, in hotel rooms and secret calls and silences too loud to ignore. Instead of replying, I turned off the phone and tossed it into the box of spare tools. Let her wonder. Let her sit in the quiet she created. That night, I made a small fire in the hearth, even though the warmth wasn't needed. Something about the light, the crackle, the orange glow licking the stone, it reminded me that things could still be built from broken pieces. Around midnight, a knock came at the door. I froze. It wasn't Karen. She wouldn't have knocked. I opened it slowly. Dana stood there, holding a flashlight and a tin of leftover soup. "You left your phone off," she said. "I figured that meant you'd forgotten to eat." I smiled, stepping aside. "Come in, then. The floor's not level, but the company's good." Dana didn't stay long that night. She set the soup on the counter, took in the half-demolished porch, the crooked windows, the mattress rolled out in the middle of the floor, and didn't flinch. Just smiled softly and said, "This place has a good backbone. Like it's been waiting for you." I watched her flashlight disappear down the gravel path, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Maybe years. Not attraction. Not yet. Something quieter. Recognition. The next few weeks passed in rhythm. Mornings started early. I'd walk the property with a mug of coffee, checking where the frost still clung to the grass. Then I'd haul lumber, strip rot, brace joists, and fix what time had bent. It felt like therapy. Sweat therapy. Hammer therapy. The kind that doesn't ask questions but demands your full attention. Dana came by every few days. Sometimes with groceries. Sometimes with extra tools. Sometimes just with company. She never stayed past sunset, never crossed a line. But the space she occupied, in my cabin, in my day, grew with each visit. We didn't talk about Karen. Not once. Dana never asked, and I never offered. But one night, over grilled fish and cornbread on the back deck, she looked at me and said, "You're not just fixing this place, George. You're rebuilding something in yourself." I nodded. Or maybe just tearing out the mold. She smiled. Either way, it suits you. That night, for the first time since Karen left, I slept through the night without waking. Until 6:12 a.m., when my phone, long silenced and forgotten in a toolbox, began to vibrate violently against the wood floor. I stared at the screen. "Ethan." I answered on the second ring. "Dad," he said, his voice sharp, tight. "Have you seen Mom?" I blinked. "No." "Why?" "She came by my house last night. Unannounced. Crying. She said you'd abandoned her, that you were living with another woman in a shack in the woods." I exhaled slowly. "That's one version." "What's going on?" he demanded. "She's spiraling. She said you've changed." I stood at the sink, watching the steam rise from the coffee pot. "I have." There was silence on the line. Then a sigh. "You're really not going back, are you?" "No, son. I'm not. I just don't understand how you can let it all go," Ethan said, frustration rising. 35 years. Don't those count for something?" "They count," I said quietly. "They count as lessons. They count as time I gave without ever asking what I needed in return." He was quiet again. "And this woman, this Dana, she's just part of your next chapter." "She's not a chapter," I said. "She's just someone who didn't expect me to keep being someone I wasn't." He didn't answer. Just said, "Mom's not doing well." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "But she made her decisions long before I did. I'm just finally living by them." That afternoon, Karen called. I didn't answer. Then came the messages, long, emotional paragraphs that read like a confessional and a warning wrapped into one. She said I was punishing her. That I'd moved on too fast. That she'd made a mistake, but so had I, and we owed it to each other to fix what was broken. I read every word. And felt nothing. No anger. No ache. Just the detached clarity that comes when you've stepped far enough away to see the whole picture. Karen hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she'd betrayed the version of me who would have begged for it to be saved. And that man was gone. 2 days later, I was reinforcing the kitchen beams when a car pulled into the clearing. Silver. Clean. Expensive. Karen. She stepped out like someone walking onto a battlefield, heels crunching gravel, jaw tight with purpose. She wore the same blue coat I bought her for our anniversary 5 years ago. Dana, standing on the porch with me, glanced at her, then back at me. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked. "No," I said, brushing sawdust from my hands. "I think you should hear this too." Karen reached the porch, eyes bouncing between us. Her voice trembled with effort. "I came to talk." "You're talking," I said. She looked at Dana, then back at me. "In private." "This is my home," I said. "Everyone standing here gets to hear whatever you've got to say." Karen's face tightened. "So that's it? You're playing house with someone else now?" Dana didn't flinch. Just crossed her arms, watching with calm curiosity. "I'm rebuilding," I said. You're welcome to stay and watch, but I wouldn't recommend it. I made a mistake, Karen said, stepping forward. I got scared. I drifted. But I never stopped loving you. You stopped telling the truth, I replied. You stopped showing up. I thought you'd fight for me. I thought you wouldn't make me. Karen's eyes welled. I miss us, George. There is no us, I said gently. There's just a past, and what we do with what's left of it. She stood frozen for a moment, trying to read my face. Maybe looking for the softness that used to live behind my eyes. But all she saw was resolve. Dana, she said, turning, her voice icy. You don't know him like I do. Dana nodded slowly. Maybe not. But I see who he is now. And he seems a hell of a lot lighter without you. That was the final nail. Karen turned, walked back to her car, and drove off without another word. I watched her go, the way you watch a storm cloud drift past without breaking. Then I turned to Dana. You didn't have to say that, I said. She shrugged. I didn't say it for you. That night, we sat on the porch in silence, watching the stars. The fire pit crackled below us, and the lake mirrored the moon. I reached out, slowly, and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Some things, I thought, aren't built in a day. But they're worth rebuilding, if you start with the truth. The morning after Karen showed up was colder than usual. The kind of cold that cuts through your clothes and settles in your ribs. But I didn't feel it. I stood on the deck, coffee in hand, watching steam rise from the lake like a ghost letting go of something. The fire pit still smelled like the night before, ash, pine, and something else. Closure. Dana came out a few minutes later, her hoodie half-zipped and her hair pulled back. She didn't say anything, just handed me a folded piece of paper. What's this? I asked. An idea, she said. Of something we could build here. Together. It was a sketch. Rough lines, penciled-in notes. A workshop. Open air on one side. Wood bench. Shelving. Rainproof roof. A place to tinker, to repair, to create. You drew this? I asked. She shrugged. The military teaches you to plan everything. Even dreams. I smiled. I thought this place was just mine. It is, she said softly. But maybe it's also becoming something more. That day, we drove into town and bought lumber. Tools. A weatherproof tarp. We talked about insulation and roof pitch and drainage, but beneath every word was something warmer, the sound of two people rebuilding, not just a porch or a structure, but trust. Over lunch, Dana told me about her father. A mechanic like mine. A man who believed in fixing things until they couldn't be fixed anymore. A man who stayed too long in a marriage that drained the light from his eyes. I promised myself I'd never do that, she said. That I'd walk away before I forgot who I was. Did you? I asked. Eventually, she said. Took longer than I'm proud of. Later, while measuring beams, she looked at me and said, I like who you're becoming here. I hope you do, too. I didn't answer right away. I was still learning how to be him. That evening, we cooked outside, fish and vegetables on a flat skillet over the fire pit. No phones. No past. Just two chairs, a meal, and the quiet comfort of someone who doesn't ask you to be anyone but who you are. And then the silence broke. My phone buzzed from the inside shelf. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. Dana gave me a look. Go ahead. I'm not scared of your ghosts. I checked it. Lily. 3 missed calls. Then a voicemail. Dad. It's Mom. She's at the hospital. She collapsed at Aunt Rita's. They're saying it's stress, Or something with her heart. I don't know. Can you, just call me? I sat down hard, the fire suddenly too bright. Dana's expression didn't shift. What do you want to do? I don't know, I said. That's not true. She was right. I did know. I just didn't like the answer. I arrived at the hospital an hour later. Room 218. Karen was asleep, tubes in her arm, oxygen clipped to her nose. Her face looked older than I remembered. Pale. Soft. The weight she'd always carried around her mouth, that quiet judgment, that need to control the outcome of every conversation, was gone. Lily was sitting beside her. She looked up when she saw me, eyes wet, shoulders tight. She asked for you, she whispered. I nodded and stepped forward. Karen stirred when I sat down. Her eyes fluttered open. George, she said, breath thin. I'm here. She blinked slowly, like it cost her something. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. A weak smile ghosted across her lips. I deserve that. We sat in silence. Machines beeped softly in the background. I was angry, she said. About a lot of things. About getting older. About feeling invisible. I thought maybe if someone else saw me, it would fix something inside me. You didn't need someone else, I said. You just needed to look in a mirror. She closed her eyes. I know. I'm sorry. The apology hung there, light and fragile. But I didn't come for that. I'm not coming back, I said gently. Not to the house. Not to the marriage. She nodded once. I didn't think you would. I hope you find peace, I said. I really do. Karen turned her head to the window. I think I already did. I stayed 10 more minutes. Held her hand. Not because I wanted her back, but because 35 years deserves at least one goodbye that doesn't end with slammed doors and silence. When I stepped out into the hallway, Lily was waiting. She still loves you, you know, she said. I hope she learns to love herself more. Lily hugged me then. For a long time. And when she pulled away, there were tears in both our eyes. You seem different, she said. I am. By the time I got back to the cabin, it was almost midnight. The fire was low, the stars bleeding across the lake like spilled light. Dana was sitting on the steps, blanket around her shoulders. You went, she said. I had to. She nodded. Are you okay? I think I am, I said. More than I've been in years. I sat beside her. No need to explain. She understood what it meant to leave, and to still care about the person you left behind. And as we sat there, the workshop plans tucked under my arm, I realized something important. This wasn't a rebound. This wasn't an escape. This was the beginning of something real. Something slow. Something honest. And I was finally ready for it. 6 months later, the cabin didn't look like it used to. The porch was rebuilt, level, sturdy, and wide enough for 2 chairs and a small table. The fireplace worked like a charm now, thanks to a long weekend, 3 bruised knuckles, and a stubborn chimney flue Dana managed to charm with a crowbar. The workshop stood proud behind the cabin, half-built and already full of tools, oil cans, and half-finished projects that didn't need to be finished to feel like progress. And I looked different too. Not in the mirror, though I'd dropped a few pounds, and the circles under my eyes had softened. But deeper than that. I'd found something I didn't know I'd lost. Something that had slipped away slowly during the years of pleasing, compromising, dimming my light to make someone else feel brighter. I'd found myself. Dana was part of that, of course. But not in the way Karen had once been, not a fixture, not a role. Dana didn't complete me. She challenged me, centered me, reminded me who I already was. Every morning, we'd walk the lake trail with steaming mugs of coffee and quiet conversation. She'd ask about engine parts one was repairing for the neighbors, and I'd ask about the book she was reading. Sometimes we wouldn't talk at all. Just walk. And breathe. And exist. One afternoon, Ethan drove up with his 2 kids, our first real family visit since the fallout. The kids ran wild in the woods, building forts and fishing, the way kids should. Ethan helped me tighten the bolts on the roof trusses for the workshop, sweating through his shirt and smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. After dinner, he pulled me aside. "You seem at peace," he said. I nodded. "I am. I didn't get it before," he admitted. "Thought you were giving up. Thought you were throwing everything away. And now? Now I think maybe you were finally picking something up." I looked at him, my son, a man now, and saw the part of him still learning that lesson. The part that hadn't yet asked, what do I want my life to feel like, not just look like? Before they left, I gave him a toolbox. My father's. The one that started it all. "Pass it on when the time's right," I said. "But only if it's earned." That fall, I got a call from a lawyer in Savannah. Walter Blake, the man who had owned the boatyard I apprenticed at as a teenager, the one who taught me the difference between repair and restoration, had passed away. He'd left no children. No immediate family. But he'd left me something. A small inheritance. Modest savings. And a note. "You were the only one who ever stayed late, even when the job was thankless. I watched the life you built, George. You lived like a craftsman. You earned this. Use it well." I stood on the porch with Dana as the wind rustled the trees and read that letter 3 times. Then I handed it to her. She smiled and squeezed my hand. "So, what now?" "We finish the workshop," I said. "And then maybe build a guest cabin. Something for the kids. Or maybe just a quiet space for others like us. People starting over." Her smile widened. "You think we're qualified to help people start over?" "No," I said. "But we sure as hell know how not to." That winter, Dana moved in officially. Not with a ceremony or a suitcase, just a quiet shifting of rhythms. Her books ended up on my shelf. Her boots by the door. Her tools in the second drawer of my workbench. She made a stew one night that reminded me of the one my mother used to make. I told her that. She didn't say anything, just slid the bowl closer to me and gave me that smile that always reached her eyes. One night, just before the first snow, I walked down to the lake alone. The moon was high, the air so still it felt like time had paused to take a breath. I stood on the dock and thought about everything that had led me here. Karen's betrayal. The silence that followed. The safe in the garage. The first nail in the new porch. The soup on a cold night. The woman with a crowbar and a backbone. The letter from a mentor long gone. And the slow, quiet rebuilding of a man who had spent his life fixing things for everyone but himself. And then I spoke, out loud, to no one. "I forgive you," I said. I wasn't even sure who I meant, Karen. Myself. The universe. Maybe all of them. The next morning, Dana woke first. I heard her stirring in the kitchen, humming faintly, the sound blending with the crackle of the fireplace and the gentle knock of branches against the cabin walls. I rolled over and looked at the window. Sunrise was breaking across the lake in gold and crimson. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I'd built. And what I still had left to build.